Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder why listening to a song can make you imagine completely different things than your friend, even if you are listening to the exact same tune? Well, new research dives deep into exactly that. This study asks a super interesting question. We know music is powerful, but what happens in our minds when we listen is rarely just about the sound. Some researchers think that how we frame music, that is, the little clues we give ourselves or are given about the situation, can actually shape what we think about. Imagine hearing a piece of music. Do you picture a concert hall, a bar, a movie scene, or a video game? This study wanted to see if these little hints, these contextual frames, actually change the mental movie playing in our heads. The core idea is that our thoughts while listening to music, which the researchers call music-influenced mental content, or MIMC for short, aren't just random flashes. They're influenced by everything around the music, including our past experiences. Yes, but also the situation we imagine ourselves in. The researchers wanted to test if just telling someone, hey, this music is often heard in a bar, actually makes them think of bar related things more than if they were just told, this music is often heard in a movie. So how did they do this? They gathered a bunch of short, unfamiliar instrumental music clips from different genres like electronic, jazz, metal, and 80s pop. Then they had 160 people listen to these clips. Now, here is the clever part. For each clip, they paired it with one of 4 simple phrases setting a scene. Typically heard in a bar, typically heard in a concert, typically heard in a movie, or typically heard in a video game. Participants only saw one context for each clip. They weren't told any of this beforehand. They just listened, and then wrote down whatever came to their mind, whatever thoughts or scenes popped up. After everyone wrote down their thoughts, the scientists had to figure out if the thoughts were similar. This is where some really cool technology comes in called natural language processing, or NLP. Think of it like a super smart computer program that can read and understand what people write. They used 2 different ways to measure similarity. One looked at the meaning of the words used, and the other looked at the exact words used. This is like checking if 2 descriptions mean the same thing, even if they use different words. And also checking if they use the same words. They compared almost 2 million pairs of descriptions. That is a lot of thinking to analyze. So, what did they find? Drumroll please. The context cues worked. People who heard the same music in the same context cue tended to have more similar thoughts than people who heard completely different music and different context cues. This was true whether they looked at the meaning of the thoughts or the specific words used. Even when they accounted for things like the music genre or how talkative each person was, the context still made a difference. It is like giving people a hint about a movie plot. They're more likely to think about things related to that plot. But here is a crucial detail. While context helped, the music itself was still a stronger influencer. People who heard the exact same music clip had even more similar thoughts than those who just shared the same context cue. This makes sense. The music is the primary experience. The context framing is like an extra layer, a guide, not the whole story. And the real magic happened when both music and context were aligned. When people heard the same clip and had the same context cue, their thoughts were the most similar overall. This means context and music don't compete. They work together, adding to each other to create more shared mental experiences. Now, they also found something really interesting about genres. Metal music seemed to be the most susceptible to the context framing. In the metal genre, the context cue actually had a stronger influence on what people thought about than the music clip itself for those listening to music within the same genre. Jazz, on the other hand, was the least influenced by the context cues. This might be because metal's musical style is very distinct, but perhaps also a bit more open to interpretation, making the added context more influential. Jazz might have more established, ingrained associations for listeners. They also did a quick side study to see if people believed the context pairings. For example, if they thought it was actually believable that a certain clip would be heard in a bar. They found that whether people believed the pairing influenced the exact words they used, but not the overall meaning of their thoughts. This suggests the framing works more like a subtle hint or an association. Rather than convincing people of a literal truth, it taps into our existing mental associations. So, what does all this mean? It shows that our musical experiences are not purely internal or dictated solely by the sound. External clues, even very simple ones like typically heard in a bar, can significantly steer our thoughts and create more shared experiences among listeners. This concept is related to something called source sensitivity in psychology, which is about how we understand the origins and context of things and how that affects our appreciation. This study provides concrete evidence that this source sensitivity plays a role in what goes on in our minds when we listen to music. It proves that even when we're presented with new music, our thoughts about it can be guided by the small bits of information we get about its context. It is fascinating to think about how much our mental world is shaped by these subtle environmental cues. Music provides the broad strokes, the emotional landscape, but the context can fill in the details, giving us shared elements to think about even with unfamiliar sounds. In practice, this means that while the music is definitely the main driver of our thoughts and feelings, the environment or the story we associate with it can add another layer of connection. Think about how much more you might feel connected to a song if you hear it at a concert with thousands of other people compared to just hearing it alone in your room. That shared context amplifies the experience. The fact that different genres are affected differently is also really insightful. It highlights that our understanding of music is intertwined with cultural associations, and learned ways of listening. Music genres aren't just about sounds. They carry baggage, both good and bad perhaps, that interacts with how we interpret them. Of course, no study is perfect. The researchers point out that they used a limited number of clips and genres. So while they found that metal was more susceptible to context, we can't say all hard rock or all experimental music is the same. Future studies could explore more genres and more clips to see if these patterns hold. Also, they mentioned that musical expertise might play a role. Perhaps experts are more resistant to framing cues because they rely more on their deep knowledge. What is really exciting is how this research opens up new questions. For instance, what kind of thoughts are shared? If a context is social, like a concert or bar, do people think more about other people, friends, or communities? This could have applications in therapy using music and guided imagery for well-being. Also, the way they use technology to analyze thoughts is a big step forward. Using advanced AI to understand the meaning and words in our spontaneous thoughts shows us how much we can learn about the human mind. So the next time you are listening to music, pay attention to the little story you are telling yourself. Is it a concert hall, a road trip, a quiet cafe? That framing is probably influencing what you imagine, and it is a powerful reminder that our minds are always making connections, weaving together sound, context, and our own personal histories. It's a beautiful illustration of how subjective experiences can still have shared patterns, a testament to the social and cultural nature of how we connect with art, especially music. The music sets the stage, but the little clues we get about where that stage is can really change the play. This is the kind of research that makes you think about your own experiences differently. It is not just about whether you like a song, but about the whole mental landscape it creates for you. And that landscape can be shaped in fascinating ways by the context we give it. What do you think? When you listen to music, what kind of context do you imagine? Let me know in the comments below, and if you found this exploration of music and the mind interesting. Please hit that like button, subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab for more science deep dives, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks for watching!